Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and so it's 5 months now until Brexit, and a few days after Boris Johnson promised that we would have a full Brexit deal agreed. And I thought it might be a good time to discuss a few of the very important issues that still don't seem to have been dealt with. In this video, I want to take a look at the contentious issue of the Brexit lorry parks in Kent, particularly, that the government are building, why even Brexit MPs are having a fit over them, and why it is that they're actually needed. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, at the end of this year, the UK loses access to the EU's single market. Now, that has a number of implications for our transport systems. Rail, air and road operators won't be allowed to operate in the EU with licenses granted by the UK. At the moment, it's fine. It won't be next year. Now, to what extent they will be allowed to operate depends entirely on what sort of deal Boris Johnson agrees this autumn. And there'll be some people saying, well, he's not going to agree anything. Now, I often talk about the fact that the trajectory he's on is for a no-deal Brexit. But that doesn't mean to say nothing agreed at all. Because if actually nothing was to be agreed at all, which is surely impossible, then almost nothing will be allowed in the EU from the UK. For example, the EU's Brexit preparations document highlights the fact that road transport operators based in the UK will no longer have a community licence. That means they can't operate in the EU. Now, if there were to be no agreement on this matter at all, then we would be subject to quotas. Now, we've talked about quotas quite a bit in terms of goods, for example, but it also applies to road operators, lorry drivers, So we'd be subject to the quotas laid out in the European Conference of Ministers of Transport. Now, what that means is that we will only be able to use up to 5% of our transport needs, is how it's been described, somewhere between 2% and 5%. So basically, at best, only 1 in 20 of our haulage lorries will be allowed in the EU to operate at all. Now, that should definitely cut down on queues at ports like Dover. Of course, the reverse will also be true, because EU-based lorries will not be allowed in the UK on an EU licence either, and they'll be subject to the same quotas. Unless, of course, the UK unilaterally waives those restrictions, but that's still not going to help our lorries access the EU. Now, obviously, there is no way that Boris Johnson dare not agree something that at least allows British-based transport operators in the EU, because that would be ridiculous. So although I'm not expecting much of an agreement, this is why some commentators are sort of saying that whatever is agreed will be little better than no deal, because that's what it means. We are going to have some sort of agreement. We have to. There are some things that we are going to agree. It's just not going to prevent the friction in trade and indeed movement. So where we are when we talk about no deal Brexit is we mean we're not going to get a deal that allows for frictionless trade. But we have to agree some things out of necessity. Besides, if the government really were planning to reduce our freight to a 20th of its current size, they wouldn't be pissing everyone off in Kent with these secretive lorry parks. Which brings me on to these. Now, when I say secretive, what I mean is the government are planning on building a number of lorry parks. We can't be certain exactly how many because they're not announcing things. Work has begun on sites, which means that we now know about these things, but we didn't do until work did begin, which means there may be sites where work is going to begin at some point in the future, which we don't yet know about. The government have been quietly buying up large areas of land in Kent, which is the county that holds our important port of Dover. Local residents have been told nothing about it at all. And as I say, news of it only really broke last month. It's very difficult to get any real information on it. The government aren't even really saying exactly what they're for, but of course we know what they're for. Local MPs are up in arms, which includes a number of pro-Brexit Conservative MPs who actually seem to have the nerve to complain about the impacts of Brexit that they argued and voted for. So first of all, why are they needed? Because this is relatively straightforward. So the president of a Chamber of Commerce in Kent explained that amongst other eventualities, like when French fishermen decide to hold a bit of a blockade around Calais, which they do from time to time, they're cheeky chappies. And I think we can probably expect some more of that behaviour if fishing isn't sorted out. Then Kent basically comes to a standstill, so I gather. You end up with lorries blocking up all the roads because they can't get through the ports. That makes sense. Apparently and understandably, this is a serious issue for businesses in Kent because, not only customers, but their own deliveries can't get through. And as well as just being a general pain in the arse for everyone else in Kent, I imagine, as well. Now, that happens now and then. Now, let's say you were going to be faced with a situation where it was going to happen every single day from January the 1st, 2021. Every single day, lorries blocking your roads. That obviously is not sustainable, hence the lorry parks. So the lorry parks have to be built because there is no way of getting lorries across the border in anything like the time frame that they can right now. Because the choice is you either let them block up all the roads, which you can't do, or you put them somewhere. So the government decided to put them somewhere in preference to blocking up all the roads. This is why we're building a number of very large lorry parks to keep the roads clear. Now, I don't know exactly how many have been built. There's a number of numbers going around. Michael Gove announced 5 last month. But I think it's also been reported there could be as many as 12 planned. But I don't necessarily know that that's 12 in Kent. I don't think that's Kent. I think that could be elsewhere as well. I mean, there's going to be some near me. More about that in a minute as well. The locals, of course, are not impressed. As I say, Conservative MPs are complaining about the amount of noise it will cause and pollution, the effect on residents, because they've been built quite close to homes. Of course, as people will be quick to point out, these MPs all voted for Brexit, and more than that, they actively persuaded their own constituents to vote for it. So essentially, it's a NIMBY attitude that they're adopting now. And much of it is simply NIMBY. When you sort of read reports about what locals are saying, NIMBY not in my backyard, a lot of people don't want to admit that their Brexit brain fart was a bad idea and that actually maybe it's not worth it after all. So what they argue is, no, Brexit's fine. You shouldn't build it here. Build it somewhere else. So, these are people who just want others to suffer for their philosophy. But just because they don't understand the need for the locations doesn't mean there isn't one. The sites obviously will have been chosen partly on availability. I mean, the government had they can't build it where they don't own land, but also proximity to haulage routes, motorways, junctions, important junctions, that sort of thing. So they've been built there to reduce. If you build it somewhere else, you still end up with the congestion while the lorries are on the way to the lorry park. So the sites have been chosen sensibly, according to business leaders in Kent. But one thing that is not at all clear from these, Brexiteer MPs that are complaining about these lorry parks is what their counter-proposal is. Because I know what the counter-proposal is from the local residents, or just don't build it here. Well, that's just NIMBY. But what about these Brexit MPs? What's their proposal? If the sites are not built, what do they think should happen? Are they in favour of the roads being permanently blocked every single day? Would they prefer the Port of Dover just to close completely, or should we just do without ports at all? So there'll be no lorries. I've no idea, because although I've seen their complaints, I have not seen their solutions. Of course, there are locally elected representatives of other parties that have much more credibility when arguing against the sites. And as they point out, sites that would not be needed at all if we negotiated full access to the single market, as they promised to do multiple times. Of course, Dover isn't the only point of entry into the UK. It's just the largest and most important for our trade. Near me, for example, the Hull and Goole Port Authority are also not very happy. I mean, at least in Kent, they know some of the things that are happening. We don't know anything. The local authority, the Port Authority that is, have been moaning about the fact that we've got 5 months to go and the government still haven't told them even where they're going to be carrying out their customs checks at the Humber Estuary. Like, where are we going to be setting up to carry out these customs checks that at the moment we don't check? And for all Gove's boasting about the new customs bureaucrats he's hiring, my local port authority hasn't been allocated any as yet. So locals here are getting ready to suddenly find the Department of Transport building new lorry parks as well, because we're going to need them. Maybe the whole country can become one giant lorry park, who knows? Because Hull, which is the city near this port, pretty much on the port, has the same problem as Dover, really, in that geographically there isn't the capacity to expand. So any new facilities you need have to be built further out. That includes lorry parks. And I imagine the same could be true of ports around the UK as well. Ports tended to historically been built where the geography was suitable for that. That means not suitable for expanding. Geography doesn't really have much consideration for the needs of Brexit. And, what my local port authority was saying is, so they bring in 150 million kilos of food through the port each year, and almost all of it is from the EU, which means almost none of it is subject to any routine checks. And the port authorities do not know exactly how to plan because the government are not giving them the information that they need. Because so far, the only thing the government have actively done of any consequence that you can see is start to build lorry parks. And as Michael Gove's opposite number in Labour, Rachel Reeves, said, the government said that this was going to be the easiest ever trade deal. Well, we don't have a trade deal. All we have is a blueprint for a giant lorry park. But there it is. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.